It's just a quick overview of the Eureka Atom Speciality 75mm grinder. It's designed as a commercial grinder, but it's not too big. It can be used in the home. It's got 75mm large flat burrs, which are good quality, and I believe you would have the option for tin coated burrs as well, but certainly Eureka Mythos burrs would fit in that, no problem. It's the same burr, just tin coated. The display is nice. I think it's one of their OLED displays. It's very nice and clear. It's a fairly quiet grinder. If I put it just onto manual mode, I don't know if there's coffee in there. This counter's a bit slippery, so there's quite a lot of motor torque flipping it round. But when grinding, it doesn't make a lot of noise. It's a great menu system. I mean, you can just sit here, you can press that for single shot, that for double shot. You can reduce or increase the time by 0.05 of a second just with a simple button press. You can press there for manual mode. Very easy to use. Yeah, there's probably advanced functions to reset counters and examine counters. I must admit to have not read the manual because just don't need to. I just like a grinder that you can get into these modes simply and easily to program times without having to press and hold down buttons. So I think that's great. The grind is great. It just drops straight into the portafilter. It's clump free. With a normal portafilter, those forks would hold it. This is a bottomless, so a little more fiddly to get to the button, and I have to be particularly careful because this isn't mine to keep, that I don't want to actually damage, scratch the surface of the grinder or anything. There's a nice LED, lights up the portafilter, deposits a nice neat mount, pretty mess free, not completely, but pretty good. Obviously, if you wanted to reduce mess, you could use a portafilter ring or something like that, but then if you use a portafilter ring, it does mean you've got to get behind and press the button manually with your thumb, so it all starts to get a bit awkward. The grind adjustment system on Eurekas is fabulous. It's just this knob here, and you can turn it. Really easy to turn, very easy to adjust. The only thing I would say, and I don't know why Eureka don't do it, is why they don't have a mark. There's like a notch there in the metal, but to be honest, if you're in a dimly lit bar, you're not going to stand a hope of seeing that. A little white mark would have helped. In fact, when I'm setting my grind, I use a little corner of the screw bit there. There's a little edge, and I just line up with that edge. In fact, if they put a white mark there, it would be more sensible. So I hadn't really thought that one through for use in a busy coffee bar in the evening or something like that. It's easy to open and get to the burrs, and there's not much dead space in the grind chamber. And I will open it in a minute when I've gone through some of the points I don't like so much. The bean hopper design. I'm going to move just upwards so you can see the hopper. It's a great hopper. Let's move in a bit closer. The biggest problem with it is it's got quite a flat bottom. So if you're using it at home use, where you wouldn't perhaps have it totally full, at times you find yourself having to push the beans in that are hanging here that haven't dropped in the hole, the last few beans. If you're filling it up for commercial use, you're not going to care. It's also quite a big hopper. I mean, really, even for home use, you just don't need a hopper that big. Something much smaller would have been ideal. And this is small in commercial terms. It's nicely made, it's great, it's polycarbonate, feels strong. But like I say, a little bit flat. Something with a much steeper lead into the throat, I think would have been better. It's not really a grinder for single dosing. You put your beans in the hopper, it's a grind on demand, press and you get coffee out. If you're worried about the coffee being stale, if you haven't used it for a few hours in home use, then yeah, you can purge for perhaps half a second or a second, get 3 or 4 grams out and discard those, and then you're into reasonably fresh coffee. Yeah. So let's get this hopper off. So to get to the burrs, you take off the hopper. Not going to use this. I'm going to use or one of these, because I'd lose the will to live. This grind chamber then has these large screws in here that are not Allen screws, but are actually for a big screwdriver. And I'll be honest, I don't like this. I wish they were big Allen bolts, personally, because how many people are going to have a screwdriver, a big one like this, of the right size hanging around? And there should be an Allen key supplied in here. Plus, you don't have to do these as tight as people think. They do have to be nipped up. But the first time you undo them, they'll be very tight from the factory. The other thing I don't like about them is if you drop one of these inside the grinder, you're going to have to be turning this heavy grinder upside down to try and shake it out. And it's not something I'd particularly want to do. But anyway, let's take these out. So yes, I'd like to see either, again, these made tool-free, which is tricky because there's not space for a wing bolt, which would be nice, or to see these as Allen keys and not this dreadful thing, because when you use a big screwdriver, your temptation is to put it in really tight. And the whole reason Posi-Drive was designed, or this type of screw thread, was they were designed to cam out when you did them up, so it would make them difficult to undo, and they cam out to prevent too much torque being applied. This is not a great fitting, whereas an Allen key is a far better fitting. So yeah, Eureka, make that an Allen bolt, not that stupid crosshead. Anyway, once it is out, you get access to the burr chamber. They're nice big 75mm burrs, a little bit of coffee around the periphery, which is going to go everywhere, so I'm going to brush that off, and then we'll let's brush the loose coffee off, then we'll get into the heart of it. So in here is nice thin sweep arms, very little space between the burr and the chamber. I should turn this off, I suppose, otherwise I'm going to kill myself. It shouldn't run, obviously, but I don't want to take the chance. But in fact, let's see if it runs. I'm curious here. If this will run without the top on, be prepared for coffee everywhere. I'll put it on manual. Oh, and indeed, it does run. That's not fantastic. There's actually no safety interlock, which, Eureka, you need to think about that. Let's get a better look. So there's the grind adjuster. That moves the whole motor and bottom spindle up and down. So that works exceptionally well. I'm going to tip the grinder forward, just so that you can see. There is the burr chamber, a very small gap, the sweep arms, and this rubber piece covers the exit chute, which is like a clear chute, and behind that is the clump crusher, and the clump crusher sits at the front, leaving about 1 centimetre of exit chute between this chamber and the clump crusher. And that little bit is what holds a little bit of retained grinds behind that clump crusher, and it's what takes about 3 or 4 grams to purge clear, so that you're definitely into clean coffee, even though probably only 1 gram or 2 is at the most retained in there. But it does give a great grind quality coming out. This auger here is meant to help the beans through. I don't know if it does that much, but it's on all the Eureka grinders. It must help somewhat in, funneling the beans down when the throat is full. When there's just a few beans, I doubt it does a huge amount for those last few beans if you do try and single dose it. Now, one last tip. When you put this burr on, presuming it's been aligned at the factory, note the position of this and replace the burr, the top burr and carrier, in the same place, with that in the same position. Don't over tighten these screws. They've got to be snugged in, but not overly tight. Okay. Don't drop them in the grinder. And when you tighten this one down, as you see, I'm not doing it tight at all yet. I'm just nipping each one up. Well, not even nipping it up. I'm just bringing them down evenly, because it's very important just to get the thing so it all positions itself. So yes, don't do these up too tight. Put your screwdriver in, a couple of fingers, just use your fingertips on the handle, just nip it up. Yeah, they're in aluminium. Last one, couple of fingers. Don't use your hand like that, otherwise they will just go far too tight. They're not going to vibrate out, because and double check them. Once you've been round them once, go around them a second time and double check them. They're in aluminium, it's not going to work loose. Very easy to over tighten, and that way would lie some severe single dosing. Eureka do sell something called the Blowup system. And I said to Bella Barista, who supplied me this grinder for testing, send me a Blowup system, because I can't single dose with it. Well, it's not, it's not really a single dose where you can tip 18 grams in and get 18 grams out, because obviously there's still trapped coffee inside there. So Eureka made the Blowup system to solve this problem, and this is it. Now, it's a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be. This is the hopper, and this is the Blowup hopper. It's even bigger than the standard hopper. And it's like this huge rubber ring. It goes, I don't suppose it doesn't matter which way around it goes. It fits like this onto the rubber piece. Now, there is a screw in it, but I think it's a multi-fit for many grinders, because you can't secure it with the securing screw at the back. Here it is with the Blowup hopper on, and this is the relative height with the normal hopper, much more petite, and you're meant to puff the coffee out. Well, I tried puffing it. It didn't work. I tried giving it an impulse. It didn't work. You can sit there grinding. So your beans are meant to be in here. This is meant to be full. You grind, and then when you stop, you're meant to puff out the last bit. I guess that doesn't work. I mean, it just gets trapped behind the clump crusher in there. It doesn't come out. Maybe if you have 15 or 20 presses, eventually a lump of something falls out. But also, even used with beans in the hopper, you are still going to have, in the pre-crush zone of the grinder, a whole load of crushed beans. And this isn't going to get those out. And they're going to be losing aromatics, which is part of the reason for purging as well, because of not just the beans trapped behind there, but the beans in the pre-crush zone you want to get through. So you want to get about 3-4 grams out if there's been a long wait or you're a home user. If you try a single dose, so there's nothing in there and you put 18 grams in, which I tried from a clean chamber, like 15 presses, it's still not coming out. I've still only got sort of 14 grams out. Eventually I was able to get almost all of it out, but it was ridiculous. Press, you're sitting there and you're doing this and you're banging it, lose the will to live. Eureka, I think you can do better than this. I don't even understand this for £109. Now maybe you've got one and this works fabulous for you. If so, put a comment in on the video, or send me an email, tell me how. Maybe this works fabulously on other grinders, but I don't believe it works on the 75E. I wouldn't recommend you buy the Blowup system for the 75E. Just use it with the standard hopper that it comes supplied with. I just think this £109 is not going to do it for you. And if you really have to have a single doser with no retention, that you want to purge everything out, this isn't going to do it. This is a grinder where you stick your beans in the hopper, you casually press the portafilter on the button, you get a nice neat mound, you tamp, and you pull your shot. And if you want to use it in the home and you haven't used it for an hour or two, say 3 hours, you can go in there and you can purge out for a second half a second or a second, purge 3 or 4 grams out of it, and then you'll be into fairly clean coffee, and your shots will be nice and consistent. It's a great grinder, really fast for the commercial environment, fabulous for the home environment. If you can afford one, great. But just remember, you will have to do a little bit of purging. There might be modifications you can do that'll make this work, but in standard form with the clump crusher installed, the blow-up system doesn't really do anything on here.